My name's Hayden Keys. I'm a senior and I go to Plano West, and I've been going to this church since I was young. And as I volunteered to preach a sermon for Youth Sunday, I had no clue what I would say. All I knew was that I have experienced God in my life. I felt as long as I knew the Lord, then I was fit to speak today. For many, church is the first step in beginning a relationship with God and discovering His love. This first impression and interaction with God is important, as it can either draw people towards Him or divert them onto another path. So it is essential that the church is always inviting and presenting God in the light that is deserved and represents Him well. And from my perspective, our church has never failed in that respect. Just like church for many, youth provided my first exposure to God and His love. For me, my first impression of God was without a doubt the greatest feeling in my life. I could feel His love and mercy and His great redeeming power all around me as I worshiped Him with other dozens of youth around me. Everyone in the room was visibly moved by the presence of the Lord that night. That was 6 years ago at Fall Retreat, an annual trip to Sky Ranch that our youth take every fall. Ever since then, I have been pursuing Him, and although I may stray off my path every once in a while, I remember my eagerness that I had when I was a little 12-year-old boy, when I couldn't wait to grow closer with God. Without that great first impression that youth provided me, I can honestly say I would not be the same person as I am today. The youth program here is also a place where I have been able to go in times of happiness and in times of need. I've not only been able to find God, but I've also discovered myself through our church and youth. I also learned to see God in everyday life, even outside of church. One of the most important aspects of youth that is seldom found elsewhere is having fellowship with youth that share the same struggles and beliefs as I do. Most of us in the senior class, and all the youth for that matter, have been faced with temptations and tough decisions in our everyday lives. And although these decisions are hard to make, it is comforting to know that we all have a place to go where we are all facing the same struggles. During youth, we have the option to talk about our feelings and troubles in our life, or even just escape our worries as teenagers and have fun with our friends. The church and the youth program has helped me, and I'm sure my peers as well, stay grounded in life when I'm experiencing doubt in my future. And as a senior, I experience a lot of that. During Sunday school, weekly Bible study, or any other time, the church and the great youth staff are here to help us. With such a great support system that we all have in the church, we can properly suit ourselves up with the whole armor of God, as our theme verse illustrates, in order to serve Him in the way He meant us to serve. Whether He meant us to serve others through mission work and volunteering, as Allie will talk about, or through spreading the gospel by singing in choir, as Kristy will talk about. Through the programs, we all have chances to discover ourselves spiritually. Suit up.
Hi, I'm Allie Heck. I'm also a senior at CUMC. I believe that everything happens for a reason. Every misfortune brings a brighter outcome. Every action allows a greater purpose to be achieved. Every encounter changes a perspective, and every experience leads to a new insight gained. For this reason, I wholeheartedly believe that my path crossing with Stacey Arps was no coincidence. It was the summer of '09 in Prescott, Arkansas. The temperatures were record high, and the humidity was at its worst. For those unfamiliar with the town of Prescott, it can be described in one word: small. Every year, the Christ United Methodist Youth Group travels to a town, usually in a neighboring state, for our APA mission trip. This particular year, like many others before, our task was to repair and build necessary additions to the crumbling homes of Prescott's some 2,000 residents. We split into 14 groups, and my group had the marvelous task of building a 20-foot deck, wheelchair ramp, and side set of stairs, all in a little less than 5 days. The first day on the job we referred to as a planning day, meaning that the adults did some math while the rest of us divvied up jobs in preparation of this massive deck. But on the second day, the sun was beating down, and everyone was working and sweating, full force, measuring, sawing, and hammering. We must have been pretty loud because a woman emerged from the side door of the house. In her arms, she gently held an adolescent boy. That boy was Stacey Arps. Honestly, it wasn't until this moment that I really understood the importance of what we were building. Stacey had no way to leave his home using his wheelchair because his family couldn't afford a ramp. Hindered not only by his disability, but also by his social status, without our help, he would never obtain such an obvious necessity. It was through our hands that his life could be changed. And yet, as life is always full of surprises, he was also part of the changing. Stacy had the mental capacity of a young child and growth defects that paralyzed him from the waist down, but his heart was larger than life. For the following days at the worksite, he was completely invested in the project. He started small, taking part in our lunchtime devotionals and watching as we built this wooden monster from the ground up. In later days, however, he expressed his desire to be a part of the physical construction. He wheeled planks of wood around, balanced across his wheelchair, he drove nails into the deck with purpose and desire, and he sanded the final project with a satisfaction and a knowing that he took part in something great. No matter what obstacle was asked of him, nothing could hold Stacy back once he pursued something, and that perseverance is something to strive for no matter who you are or what may be holding you back. When we finally completed the project, Stacy took his first roll down the ramp. As cliche as it sounds, that moment literally changed my life. The entire group of CMC youth volunteers, adults, and neighborhood kids all whooped and hollered as he raced down all 20 feet of that very well-constructed ramp. I had never before been so overcome with the graces of God. His face was like an angel, glorified with the goodness of him. His eyes sparkled with utter joy and thankfulness for all we had accomplished together. And as long as I live, no smile will ever compare to that of Stacy's as he wheeled out of his house for the first time before a lifetime. By the time he reached the end, his mother was so overjoyed that she was brought to tears. This experience changed the whole idea of service to me. It wasn't about getting service hours to look good on college applications or to fulfill my National Honor Society requirements, but about making a difference in someone's life and in turn having them impact yours. He placed the helmet of salvation atop my head. He saved me from the worldly draw of volunteering and gave me an even greater and most meaningful purpose to put my time into helping others. I wholeheartedly believe that my path crossing with Stacy Arps was no coincidence, that reason being that he gave me a reason to serve and the armor of God to do so.
Good morning. My name is Kristy Keprta, and I am also a senior in the youth ministry. As you have seen, this year we have been discussing the different pieces of the armor of God. Out of the full armor, the sword struck me as the most interesting. The sword can have a connotation of causing pain to the enemy, but this sword is the sword of the Spirit. This is a sword of God's love and power and glory all wrapped into one blade. It is also the only piece of the whole armor that can be used offensively. The sword is our way to spread his love and forgiveness. Youth Sunday 4 years ago, I was sitting in the pews. My parents forced me to go, and I was not happy with them, to say the least. My goal was to hear my sister sing, sit through the sermon, and then get out of this church as soon as possible. But fortunately for me, the world doesn't work around my plan, it works around God's. The Living Proof Youth Choir director at the time came up to me, and he said, "Kristy, I know you can sing, I know you can sight read, so here's a piece of sheet music and a t-shirt, follow me." And I could have easily said no, and I don't really remember why I didn't, but I sang with the LPYC for the first time that Youth Sunday. My life completely changed. Whether I realized it or not, the sword of God had struck me. After singing with the choir behind me for a few years, I discovered a whole new perspective. Each individual child of God has a different sword. Just like the skit that the lovely senior class put on, the sword that I was using before didn't quite fit the person that God wanted me to be. When I finally joined LPYC, I grew in my faith quickly. I have been in choir for 10 out of my 18 years, and this choir taught me whom I was singing for. I consider music as my sword now. LPYC is a fantastic opportunity for me to use it. Through the middle school and high school summer choir tours, LPYC spreads God's love all around this country. We sing for people of all different backgrounds, and it is a truly humbling experience. As a youth choir, we are so blessed to have the opportunity to put a smile on someone's face and sing about our God every Sunday. One of my favorite memories from tour was with the children's ministry in Colorado. A couple of my friends got to know a little boy named Leon. We all ate breakfast together and joked around, and then it came time for our concert. This sweet little boy just kept waving and smiling at me during the whole program, and he was just so excited to be there. After the concert came prayer bracelets. The whole choir spent the bus ride to Colorado making bracelets so each kid could have one. My friend and I rushed over to Leon to give him a bracelet, but the first one I gave him broke off, so I gave him another, and he gave me the broken one. I still have it to this day. I asked him, "What are you going to do every time you fiddle with your bracelet, Leon?" And I'm not making this up, y'all. He said, "Pray for all of you." We all held hands as we sang our last song, and I was getting emotional, as I tend to do. Leon squeezed my hand and said, "What's wrong with your eyes?" Well, he was just a little character, to say the least. That was one of the many great memories I have had while singing the Word of God. There are so many opportunities available to the youth through this church. I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for making that possible. I wouldn't have found my sword or had any of these great memories without your spiritual and financial support. I would also like to take a moment to invite any youth in the congregation to join our ministry. Whether you get involved in UMYF, choir, Sunday school, or small groups, I promise there's something here for you. You may be sitting in the pews because your parents are forcing you, but if you get involved, you may just find the sword that fits the person God wants you to be.